Imagine walking around thinking you're completely healthy, only to find out one day that your kidneys are already functioning at just 40%. No warning, no pain, no obvious symptoms, just silent damage building up over time. That's exactly what happened to one of my patients. He looked fit, wasn't overweight, had no diabetes, no family history of kidney disease, and yet his kidneys were already in stage 3 chronic kidney disease. And the most surprising part, it wasn't caused by extreme habits or reckless eating. It was just everyday food, the kind of things you probably have in your kitchen right now, the kind of meals people eat without thinking twice. And that's exactly why this matters. Because your kidneys are one of the quietest organs in your body. They don't complain. They don't signal distress until things are already serious. In fact, most people with stage 3 kidney disease have no idea they even have it. We see this constantly. And by the time symptoms appear, a significant amount of kidney function is already gone and it's not coming back. So if you care about your health or even just want to avoid becoming part of that statistic, this is something you need to understand. And if you stick with me until the end, I'll also address one specific food that people constantly ask about because the truth behind it might not be what you expect. Let's start with something many people consume daily without concern: sugary, fizzy drinks. We're talking about the full sugar versions: Coke, Pepsi, Fanta, Sprite. This one probably won't shock you. But what might surprise you is just how strong the evidence is. Large-scale studies and meta-analyses consistently show that people who regularly drink sugar-sweetened beverages have a significantly higher risk of developing chronic kidney disease over time. And when I say regularly, I'm not talking about extreme cases. I mean what many would consider normal 1 or 2 cans a day. Maybe one with lunch, another later in the afternoon. That's all it takes. The reason comes down to what happens inside your body. These drinks are packed with fructose, often in the form of high fructose corn syrup. When your liver processes large amounts of fructose, it produces uric acid as a byproduct. And elevated uric acid is directly harmful to the tiny blood vessels inside your kidneys. On top of that, it contributes to insulin resistance, which disrupts blood sugar control, and it increases blood pressure by affecting how your kidneys handle sodium and fluid. So now you've got 3 major problems happening at once: rising blood sugar, increasing blood pressure, and direct damage to the kidney's delicate vascular system. These are the exact factors that drive long-term kidney damage. So every time you drink one of these, it's not just a quick sugar hit, it's a slow shift in your internal chemistry that your kidneys have to deal with over and over again, day after day, year after year. Next on the list is processed meat, things like bacon, sausages, ham, salami. These are often seen as normal parts of meals, but the impact they have inside your body is far from harmless. Research that follows people over long periods consistently shows that higher consumption of processed meat is linked to declining kidney function and a greater risk of chronic kidney disease. When you break it down, the reasons become clear. First, these foods are extremely high in sodium. A single serving can push you close to half your daily recommended intake. And sodium increases blood pressure by causing your body to retain fluid, which puts extra pressure on the tiny filtering structures inside your kidneys. Over time, that pressure damages them. They become stiff, less efficient, and less capable of doing their job. But it doesn't stop there. Processed meats also contain nitrates and other compounds used during processing, which can trigger inflammation and oxidative stress in your blood vessels, including those in your kidneys. And then there's something most people don't think about: phosphate additives. Natural phosphate found in whole foods isn't fully absorbed by your body, but the inorganic phosphate added to processed foods is absorbed almost completely. This raises phosphate levels in your blood, placing extra strain on your kidneys as they try to maintain balance. Over time, it contributes to calcification in your blood vessels, making things even worse. So with every bite of bacon or slice of processed ham, you're hitting your kidneys from multiple angles at once: pressure, inflammation, and mineral imbalance all stacking up over time. Now let's move on to something that seems completely harmless, especially if you're busy or just want something quick, instant noodles. Whether it's ramen in a packet or something like a pot noodle, this is one of the most widely consumed convenience foods in the world. It's cheap, fast, and everywhere. But the problem here, once again, comes down to sodium. And the research around sodium intake is very clear. There is a strong dose-dependent relationship between how much sodium you consume and your risk of developing chronic kidney disease. The more you have, the higher the risk. And when you actually look at the numbers, it's quite shocking. A single packet of instant noodles can contain anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium. That's roughly 65 to 85% of your entire recommended daily intake in just one meal. Now think about what your kidneys are forced to do when you consume that. Your body retains water to dilute the excess sodium, which increases your blood volume. That raises your blood pressure, and that increased pressure gets pushed through the tiny filtering units in your kidneys called nephrons. If you imagine those nephrons like delicate coffee filters, constantly exposed to high pressure, they start to wear down. They scar, they lose efficiency, and the key thing here is that they don't regenerate. Once they're damaged, they're gone for good. And to make matters worse, many instant noodles also contain phosphate additives, meaning you're not just dealing with high blood pressure stress, but also the added burden of phosphate overload. All of this from something that feels like a simple, convenient meal. Now let's talk about fast food, because this is where multiple risk factors come together in a single sitting. Think about a typical fast food meal: a double cheeseburger, fries, and a drink. What you're looking at here is what I would call a stacked risk situation. You've got processed meat loaded with sodium, refined carbohydrates from the bun and fries, saturated fats, and often processed cheese, all combined into one meal. And when researchers study dietary patterns over time, they consistently find that this type of eating habit contributes to obesity, insulin resistance, and high blood pressure. These aren't just random health concerns. These three factors are the primary drivers of chronic kidney disease. Obesity increases the workload on your kidneys because a larger body requires more blood to be filtered. Insulin resistance disrupts blood sugar control, and high blood sugar directly damages the blood vessels in the kidneys. And high blood pressure physically stresses and damages the nephrons over time. So when you eat something like a fast food meal, it's not just about calories or taste. It's a combination of multiple processes happening inside your body that gradually create the perfect conditions for kidney damage. One meal won't do this. Nobody's saying that. But when this becomes a regular pattern 2 or 3 times a week, or even daily, you're steadily building a system that makes kidney disease much more likely in the future. Then we come to energy drinks. And this is one of the most concerning categories on this list. Drinks like Monster, Red Bull, and similar products are incredibly popular, especially among younger people. And the issue here is the combination of high sugar and high caffeine, sometimes alongside other stimulants. That combination creates a very specific and harmful environment inside your body. The sugar component works in the same way as fizzy drinks, driving up fructose intake, increasing uric acid, and promoting insulin resistance. But the caffeine adds another layer. It can cause short-term spikes in blood pressure, especially in people who aren't used to consuming caffeine regularly. It also has a diuretic effect, which can influence how well your kidneys are supplied with blood. Now, individually, none of these effects are necessarily catastrophic, but the problem arises when people consume these drinks frequently, 2 or 3 a day, or multiple times a week over months and years. Researchers have started to look at energy drinks as a separate category because the stimulant effects combined with the metabolic impact of sugar create a particularly unfavorable situation for kidney health. And what makes this even more concerning is the demographic. Many of the people consuming these drinks regularly are teenagers or young adults, meaning the exposure starts early and continues for years, increasing the long-term risk significantly. Next, let's look at microwavable and frozen ready meals, because this is an area where nuance really matters. Not all ready meals are bad, and it's important to be clear about that. There are plenty of high-quality options available today that are made from whole foods, contain balanced nutrients, and are perfectly reasonable to include in your diet. But the problem lies with the cheaper, heavily processed versions, the ones that are often very low in cost and designed for convenience above all else. These meals tend to be extremely high in sodium, packed with additives and preservatives, and lacking in fiber and meaningful nutrition. And when researchers analyze diets high in ultra-processed foods, they consistently find about a 20 to 25% increased risk of chronic kidney disease in people who consume them regularly. This increased risk comes from multiple factors working together: high sodium levels, the burden of additives, spikes in blood sugar from refined carbohydrates, and the overall inflammatory effect of this type of diet. Having one occasionally is not a problem, but when your diet is built around these kinds of meals, that's when it becomes a long-term issue. One of the simplest ways to assess this is to look at the ingredient list. If it reads like a chemistry experiment, filled with things you don't recognize or wouldn't use in your own kitchen, that's a sign to be cautious. On the other hand, if the meal contains recognizable ingredients, good sources of protein and fiber, and resembles real food, then it's a much better option. Now we move into a topic that often sparks debate: high red meat consumption. And this is where it's important to be balanced and precise. This isn't about telling people to eliminate red meat entirely. Many people enjoy it, and in moderate amounts, it can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. But the issue arises when intake becomes very high, multiple servings per day, every day. Research consistently shows that diets extremely high in animal protein, particularly red meat, are associated with a higher risk of kidney disease and a faster decline in kidney function over time. The mechanism behind this is something called acid load. When your body digests protein, especially animal protein, it produces metabolic acids. Your kidneys are responsible for removing that acid. When the load is consistently high, your kidneys have to work harder, leading to a state known as hyperfiltration. This means increased pressure within the nephrons, similar to forcing water through a filter at high pressure continuously. Over time, this damages the filtering units. While there is some conflicting evidence in this area, the overall direction of research suggests that very high, sustained intake is not ideal for kidney health. So, again, this isn't about avoiding red meat completely, it's about moderation and awareness, rather than assuming there are no consequences at all. Now, let's talk about something that catches a lot of people off guard: processed cheese. This is one of those foods that most people don't even question. Cheese slices, burger cheese, cheese spreads, the kind that melts perfectly on fast food or comes individually wrapped. It feels harmless, almost like a basic staple. But when you actually look into what's inside these products, there's something important happening that most people completely overlook. Many processed cheeses contain added phosphates as part of their manufacturing process. And as I mentioned earlier, the type of phosphate matters a lot. The phosphate that occurs naturally in foods is only partially absorbed by your body, but the inorganic phosphate used in processed foods is absorbed almost completely, up to around 90%. That means a much larger amount enters your bloodstream, and over time, that creates a significant burden on your system. Elevated phosphate levels are not just a minor issue, they actively contribute to calcification in your blood vessels, which makes them stiffer and less flexible. They also interfere with the hormonal systems that regulate mineral balance in your body, particularly involving a hormone called FGF23 and the interaction between your kidneys, bones, and parathyroid glands. And all of this puts extra pressure on your kidneys as they try to maintain that balance. This becomes even more important if someone already has early kidney dysfunction, because as kidney function declines, the ability to remove excess phosphate declines as well. That creates a cycle where phosphate builds up, causing further damage. But even in people with otherwise normal kidney function, regularly consuming these types of processed foods adds to the total phosphate load in a way that is very easy to underestimate. And finally, we come to one of the most debated topics, diet fizzy drinks. This is the one that people ask about constantly. Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Pepsi Max, anything that's artificially sweetened. The question always comes up, are these actually safe? Are they a good alternative to sugary drinks? And on the surface, the logic seems completely reasonable. No sugar, no calories, so it must be better, right? It almost feels like a free pass. But the reality is more complicated than that. Some large observational studies, including well-known long-term studies that follow thousands of people over many years, have found an association between higher intake of artificially sweetened drinks and an increased risk of chronic kidney disease, as well as a faster decline in kidney function. Now, it's important to be clear, these types of studies cannot prove direct cause and effect. There are always other factors involved. People who drink a lot of diet soda may have other lifestyle habits that contribute to the risk. But what makes this harder to dismiss is that there are plausible biological explanations behind it. Artificial sweeteners can still trigger an insulin response simply because of the sweet taste, even without actual sugar. They can also alter the gut microbiome in ways that may affect metabolism over time. And in very high amounts, some animal studies suggest there could even be direct effects on kidney tissue. So the takeaway here is not that an occasional diet drink is dangerous, it's that the idea of it being completely neutral and harmless is not entirely accurate. If you're drinking several every day under the assumption that there's no downside, then it's worth reconsidering that habit. The most important thing I want you to understand from all of this is that kidney damage doesn't happen overnight. It's not caused by a single meal, a single drink, or even a single bad week. Chronic kidney disease develops slowly over time through consistent patterns. It's the gradual increase in blood pressure, the slow disruption of blood sugar control, the steady buildup of inflammation, and the constant extra workload placed on those tiny filtering units in your kidneys, the nephrons. You have around 1 million of them in each kidney, quietly working every single day to filter your blood, regulate fluid balance, and maintain the stability of your internal environment. And they do all of this without any complaint, without any warning signs, until eventually something shows up on a routine blood test. And suddenly, your kidney function is reduced, maybe down to 40%, just like that patient I mentioned earlier. No pain, no obvious symptoms, nothing to alert you along the way. That's what makes this so important, because by the time you know, a lot of the damage has already been done. But the positive side of this, and this is really important, is that everything we've talked about here is within your control. These are modifiable factors. You don't need extreme changes or perfect habits. It starts with awareness, understanding what you're eating, recognizing patterns, and making small adjustments over time. Your kidneys are doing an incredible job for you every single day, whether you notice it or not. And protecting them doesn't require perfection. It just requires paying attention to the things that quietly add up over time. Food is one of the most powerful places to start. And once you begin to understand how these everyday choices affect your body, you're in a much stronger position to take control of your long-term health.